Sup, you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. It is Monday, June 28th, 2021. Hit that like button, otherwise I will punch you in the throat. And let's just jump into it. And the first thing that we're gonna talk about today is this very viral moment in this story that I think highlights the genuine creepiness that can come from parasocial relationships between very famous stars and their fans. And at the center of this, you have Justin Bieber, who I think, for me personally, it's hard to not feel bad for him in the sense that he's been dealing with this for the majority of his life. Like, it's already bad enough you gotta deal with a paparazzi where you have celebrities like running to the edge of the earth and still some like fucker in a hot air balloon or with a drone or in the water 2 miles away with some crazy lens photographing your junk, throwing it on the internet. With the fame and territory, you also get things like hate and death threats, but then you also get a kind of fan that doesn't understand that you are a human being deserving of privacy, and that's actually why Justin was back in the news. He was just showing back up to his New York City apartment, seemingly he's gonna get rest, he's gonna do whatever the hell Justin Bieber does in private, and meeting him there was just this slew of young girls saying, Justin, Justin, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Hi, Justin. Can I get a hot, please? No.
Explaining in a very calm way that this is not a normal thing or an okay thing to do. This is the place that he goes to escape the world. And then the genuinely best thing about the clip is one of the female fans is like, yes, I understand. Can I still get a hug? And you didn't learn your lesson. You didn't learn a thing. It's still all about you. Justin Bieber also, I give him props because he was well within his rights to say, get the fuck away from my home, you psycho. Whether you like Justin Bieber or not, or any other like mainstream celebrity or social media celebrity or whoever, that is a real person. This isn't Disneyland. That's not some character. And I know there's always a group of people out there going like, hey, it comes with the territory. That's what you get for being rich and famous. But no, I'm not gonna normalize this bullshit behavior. Also, on the note of crazy fans and people being where they should not be, did you see what happened to the Tour de France this weekend?
Gone under that banner. Oh, the passive crash there. What has happened? Right on the side of the road there. Look at this. I don't know what happened there. Maybe they clipped the crowd, but whatever has happened, they are in a right mess down there at the moment now. How many riders? Let's hope.
So this absolute moron is holding a cardboard sign that apparently is voicing the support for that person's grandparents. It hit a rider who's now been identified as German rider Tony Martin. Because this happened so early and everyone was bunched so close together, it quickly caused other bodies to collide and tangle in the road. It ended up holding up the race for several minutes, with the incident reportedly forcing one of the riders to actually pull out of the event with a hand injury, 8 others receiving treatment from the race doctor. And the thing is, as far as the person responsible, as of right now, we don't actually know who that person is. Law enforcement officials have called for witnesses to help identify the sign holders, saying that they fled the scene and have still not been found. And I mean, if they do find her, she's gonna be in a lot of trouble. The tour's deputy director even telling reporters, we are suing this woman. We are doing this so that the tiny minority of people who do this don't spoil the show for everyone. And on top of that, local news outlets say that she could receive a fine of almost $18,000 and, in fact, a year in prison if a rider that was injured in the crash decides to press charges. And while obviously this specific crash has a lot of people talking, there are also a number of people saying this is not a new problem. Right? Martin, who was actually the racer hit by the sign, he suffered some cuts, some road rash, but he was actually able to continue, and he posted later on social media to all the people next to the road who think that the Tour de France is a circus, to people who risk everything for a selfie with a 50-kilometer-per-hour fast peloton, to people who think it's nice to show their naked butt, to drunken people who push us sideways on the climbs, to people who think that it is a good idea to hold a sign into the road while the peloton is passing. I want to ask these people forcefully, please respect the riders in the Tour de France. Use your head or stay home. We don't want you here. You risk our life and our dreams for what we work so hard. But ultimately, that is where we are with this story, and if anything, I'll leave you with 2 things. 1, don't be stupid. Stupid, and I mean that for the yet-to-be identified person who is obviously our douchebag of the day, or other people like her. And 2, the question I have for you with this story is, what do you think the penalty or punishment should be for this person? Or in addition to being sued, right, when you hear the potential for an $18,000 fine, maybe a year in jail max, do you think that's too little, too much, just right? I'd love to know your thoughts. And in sad, petty, attention-seeking news, we had Courtney Love in the news because she was accusing Olivia Rodrigo of essentially copying and stealing from her. Right, Olivia announcing a project, right, her Sour Prom concert film, and among one of the pictures you had this, which Courtney Love actually also shared on her Instagram and Facebook, writing "Spot the Difference," referencing the cover of her band Hole's album Live Through This. Olivia even commenting on Courtney's post, writing "Love you and live through this so much." Courtney then responded asking essentially for an apology bouquet. She also proceeded to essentially rage on Facebook. Well, Olivia has not responded anymore, kind of just allowing Courtney Love to flail about. Olivia had previously posted this photo from Carrie to her stories, seemingly noting it as a reference point for her sour prom. Which makes sense. Many have pointed to Carrie as the inspiration for the Live Through This cover. Hell, even the photographer that shot the cover for Live Through This previously said they drew from that, but still, Courtney Love is like, it's my original idea. Yeah, I guess the main point of this story is there is the attention that you ordered, Courtney. But from that, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's show, Roman. You know, Roman is a digital health platform for men, providing things like daily nutrition supplements designed to help your body perform its best. And now, Roman has a new supplement to help support testosterone production. You know, as you get older, testosterone production begins to naturally decrease in the body, which is why Roman has developed products that support your own body's natural functions. Roman combines scientifically backed ingredients like vitamin D3, zinc, magnesium, maca, and ashwagandha in a unique blend designed by healthcare professionals that you can't get anywhere else. Also, with Roman, there are no commitments and you can cancel at any time. And fantastically for you beautiful bastards, Roman is offering $15 off your first order and free 2-day shipping at GetRoman.com/Phil. That's GetRoman.com/Phil for $15 off your first order plus free shipping, or you can just click that link in the description down below. Then we should definitely talk about Derek Chauvin back in the news. Of course, one of the last times we talked about him, he had just been convicted of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Right? And so with that, many people wondering, okay, well, how many years will he actually serve? And we found out on Friday with Derek Chauvin being sentenced to 22.5 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. And as far as why it was only 22.5 years, right? You're going, okay, well, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, right? Second-degree manslaughter. How only that? One, as it turns out, Minnesota state law only allowed Chauvin to receive a prison term for the most serious charge of second-degree homicide. And two, while that charge does have a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison, the recommended sentence is only 12.5 years for people with no criminal history. Right? And before the sentencing, you had Chauvin's defense asking for probation and time served, prosecutors asking for 30, arguing that there were 5 aggravating factors that warranted a longer sentence. Right in there, I mean, last month we talked about how Judge Peter Cahill, who had been overseeing the case, agreed the prosecutors had proven 4 of the 5 factors. That Chauvin abused his power as a police officer, acted particularly cruel to Floyd, and committed the crime in front of children with at least 3 other people. Actually, in his ruling, Cahill said that it was those first 2 factors that ultimately led to his decision to sentence Chauvin to just over 22 years. Writing, Mr. Chauvin's prolonged restraint of Mr. Floyd was also much longer and more painful than the typical scenario in a second-degree or third-degree murder or second-degree manslaughter case. And concluding, part of the mission of the Minneapolis Police Department is to give citizens voice and respect. Here, Mr. Chauvin, rather than pursuing the MPD mission, treated Mr. Floyd without respect and denied him the dignity owed to all human beings, and which he certainly would have extended to a friend or neighbor. And while yes, with this, you had some legal experts, including Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, saying that this sentence reflects the seriousness of the crime, you also had many others saying that the sentence should have been longer, right? Members of the Floyd family, their attorney and Al Sharpton, saying that they wish Chauvin had been given the maximum sentence allowed, with Sharpton, yes, noting that this is the longest sentence ever given to a Minneapolis police officer for killing on the job, but adding, this is not justice. Justice is George Floyd would be alive. Justice is if they had done sentences like this before, maybe Chauvin would have thought he would have not gotten away with it. Though, I also do want to note here, while Cahill ultimately did decide on 22 years, under Minnesota law, Chauvin will likely serve less than 15 years of that sentence, with the remainder done on supervised release. However, of course, this is not going to be the complete end of the situation. It's also not the end of the legal challenges for Chauvin. He also faces criminal charges in federal court, where he's been accused of violating Floyd's constitutional rights. Chauvin is also likely to appeal his sentence and conviction, and actually in a short statement ahead of the sentencing where he declined to speak at length because of what he said were other legal matters, he offered his condolences to the Floyd family, but also stopped short of apologizing for his role in Floyd's death, and kind of offered this weird cryptic message.
There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind.
But ultimately, that is where we are now, and that rat fuck is still in prison, so there's at least that for now. Then we had Johnson & Johnson in the news, though not connected to the vaccine, which of course is one of the main reasons they've been in the news for the past year. Rather, because Johnson & Johnson has now agreed to pay New York State $230 million over the next 9 years to settle a lawsuit filed by Attorney General Letitia James that accused Johnson & Johnson of fueling the opioid crisis, which, according to the CDC, has killed about 500,000 Americans over the last 20 years, with half of those deaths coming from prescription opioids alone. Right? And following the announcement of this settlement, Letitia James said, Johnson & Johnson helped fuel this fire, while no amount of money will ever compensate for the thousands who lost their lives or became addicted to opioids across our state. These funds will be used to prevent any future devastation, with that money reportedly set to go to opioid education, prevention, and treatment. However, despite James's statement, and like we've seen so many times in the past with opioid-related lawsuits, J&J will not have to admit any wrongdoing. Instead, we see the company saying that that it remains committed to providing certainty for involved parties and critical assistance for communities in need. And also, while the settlement does prevent J&J from manufacturing or selling opioids in New York, it's really not that much of a setback. I mean, one, the company already announced that it discontinued their production and sale nationwide last year, and two, there's no such thing as true accountability or justice without people going to jail. I mean, your company, what you did, helped kill 500,000 people. It ruined countless families and lives. And really, for J&J, the penalty, and I mean, honestly, it's companies like this, it's just doing the price of business. This is something that's like a blip on their balance sheet. They'll fight it tooth and nail. I mean, this is a company that has an annual revenue of over $80 billion every year. You want true justice in this country? Let us drag these executives into the streets and not just reward them. Also, my lawyer has advised me to say the last sentence was metaphorical. But honestly, we're never really going to see any accountability or justice. And the really sad reason, and it's a very cynical thing, but it is a truth in this world, money protects money. Then, in big international news, we should definitely talk about the US military at the direction of President Biden carrying out overnight airstrikes against what they said were facilities used by Iran-backed militia groups in Iraq and Syria. In a statement, a Pentagon spokesperson said the militias were using the facilities to store weapons and conduct drone attacks against US troops in Iraq, characterizing the US strike as defensive and adding, as a matter of international law, the United States acted pursuant to its right of self-defense. The strikes were both necessary to address the threat and appropriately limited in scope. Though, currently, the Pentagon has not detailed the scope of the damage, but at least one of the militias has said that 4 of its men were killed on the Iraqi side of the attack, and separately, Syrian state media have claimed that the strikes hit residential buildings, killing 1 child and wounding 3 residents, but also at that time providing no evidence. That said, the move drew immediate calls for revenge from the groups and condemnation from the Iraqi military, which said that the strikes were a blatant and unacceptable violation of Iraqi sovereignty as well as a breach of international conventions, with them also calling for calm in both sides to avoid escalation. But with that said, this is not an isolated incident. This decision actually marks the 2nd time that Biden has ordered airstrikes in the region. Back in February, the US launched airstrikes in eastern Syria against buildings the Pentagon said belonged to Iran-backed militias responsible for attacks against American and allied personnel, with Biden at that time saying the strikes were a warning that the militias can't act with impunity. And these latest strikes come at a time that is key for 2 main reasons. First, they came just a week after Iran elected a new hardliner president with a strong anti-Western stance, a move that Biden quickly responded to by blocking access to numerous Iranian websites. And second, the strike took place against the backdrop of ongoing negotiations intended to bring the US and Iran back into compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal that Trump withdrew from in 2018. And so with this, experts are saying that the US is trying to send a message that negotiations will not take precedence over the growing strikes on US personnel, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken actually echoing that while talking to reporters today, saying,
"This action in self-defense to do what's necessary to prevent further attacks, I think sends a very important and strong message."
But also, for now, we're gonna have to wait to see how this does impact the negotiations, as well as what sort of retaliation or what just happens in general with this situation. And then finally, in absolutely heartbreaking and horrifying news, we need to talk about what happened in South Florida, where a 12-story, 136-unit building partially collapsed Thursday morning. And while this happened several days ago, rescue and recovery efforts are still underway at the Champlain Towers condo complex. In fact, a state of emergency is currently in effect in Miami Beach, and more than 300 emergency personnel are working 24 hours a day at the scene. And as far as the death toll, and understand the numbers will change here, you had authorities saying that the death toll has risen to 10. As many as 151 people are still unaccounted for. Though regarding those numbers, reports say that officials have engaged in very frank conversations with families about the chance that no more survivors would be found at this point. With the Miami-Dade mayor telling news outlets, "We do continue to hope that we find people, but certainly they're aware that we're finding remains and even that we're finding body parts, so they're preparing for that." Now, as far as what caused this collapse, officials have not determined an official reason yet, but you do have many people pointing to a 2018 report about the Champlain Towers South condo, because in that report, an engineer flagged what they referred to as a major error dating back to the building's origin, saying that a lack of proper drainage on the pool deck had caused major structural damage that reportedly included the cracking and crumbling of the columns, beams, and walls of the parking garage under the building. And while that report did not specifically indicate that the building was at risk of collapse, it did say that the problem needed to be addressed quickly, and added, "Failure to replace the waterproofing in the near future will cause the extent of the concrete deterioration to expand exponentially." But still, a month after that report, the chief building official for the town of Surfside told residents that the condo was in very good shape. And at the time of the collapse, the building was reportedly in the early stages of making repairs as part of a recertification process for buildings over 40 years old. Also, while you have the attorneys for the building, saying that their focus right now is on rescue and recovery efforts. They did also note that engineers are looking at whether construction of a high-rise next door played any sort of role in destabilizing the building, which is actually something residents raised concerns about in 2019. But, I mean, ultimately, that is where we are right now. The investigators need to look at a number of things. There are a few things at play here. But I mean, all of that is in addition to the people that live in the North Tower expressing anxiety because, you know, their building was made by the same developer, has the same design. It was built just 1 year apart. And as far as Miami-Dade County right now, they say that they will conduct audits of all buildings that are 40 years and older. But that process had to be conducted within the next 30 days. So like I said, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens. And ultimately, that is where today's show ends. Of course, as always, I'd love to know your thoughts on any of the topics today in those comments down below. Also, support the video, hit that like button if you're new here, definitely subscribe, all the good stuff. Yeah, I've already taken up enough of your time. Get off the internet. I'll see you tomorrow. I love your face.